Okay, and we'll go ahead and kick things off. So thank you again for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. You have joined the ProLinkHFA webinar series. Today we're covering supporting state tax credit programs using special program cycle types and the allocation cycle in ProLinkHFA in our TCA module. So thank you for being here. We're excited to go through this with you. I'm going to kick us off with a quick overview of our agenda and about ProLink, and then hand it off to Ryan after we talk a little bit about state LIHTC. So for today, we're going to talk again about ProLink, special programs in the TCA allocation cycle utility, TCA deal level, what data points to track, and then frequently asked questions we're hoping to get to at the end. This session is 30 minutes, so we got plenty to talk about and cover in the next half hour together. I'm Bree Kruder. I'm the Executive Vice President for ProLink, and I'm joined by Ryan Kim, who's our VP of Professional Services. He'll be doing most of the presentation today. Okay, so going over about ProLink. We have been in the affordable housing industry for quite a while now. I know many of you logged in today are our existing users and clients, so thank you very much for being so. We love working with you. And what we do for those who might be new to ProLink is we provide systems that support what we call the three pillars of affordable housing. That's our state and local housing finance agencies, our tax credit syndicators and investors, and our developers. So between those three groups, we've built holistic tools to support the business process around building affordable. So we have many tools that help us do that. ProLinkHFA is our database tool. We also have Procorum, which many of you know as our collaboration portal, working with outside parties. And then we have SmartDocs, which is an Excel and Word add-in tool that we combine with ProLinkHFA and Procorum. As I said before, we've been in this business for over 25 years now, and our team, we're technologists, we're software developers, passionate about bringing technology to this industry, and also passionate about the mission to help our clients in improving and solving the affordable housing problem in the United States. So our people are really driven by that mission and dedicated to really understanding this business in a very intimate and detailed way. We work very closely with our clients. This is just a quick image of the agencies that we work with across the US. So we have 18 housing finance agencies. Our latest agencies that have joined us and are going through implementation now are Pennsylvania Housing. We also have Hawaii Housing. So both of those are newer clients going through the implementation process. And then we also work with 2 supportive services agencies. Next, we just have this quick little overview for those who might be new to using ProLinkHFA, and for those who might not be users of ProLinkHFA. I just wanted to orient you to the area that we'll be talking about today. So we have 3 main modules: development module, our tax credit allocation module, and then our asset management and compliance module. We've been focusing last webinar, this webinar, and then really going through the summer, we'll be focusing on covering different aspects of our development module and our tax credit allocation module. So development handles deals that do not involve really funding affordable, that does not involve tax credits. Our TCA module, the tax credit allocation module, is for tax credits. So that's really the difference there. And then towards the end of this year, going into fall, we'll start to cover more on our asset management and compliance module. Okay, so now we're going to get into today's topic. So I'm going to cover just like at a very high level, the state LIHTC program and kind of what that is. So we're talking about the same thing here, and I can hand it off to Ryan. So the state LIHTC program is separate from the federal program, and it's established by the individual state governments. The state tax credits are approximately the number of them across the United States. We have about 29 states who offer the state tax credits currently. 21 states are remaining, and they either, I think in the yellow here on this map, you can see there's a couple where programs have been proposed, and then the white indicate the states where there is not currently a state LIHTC program being offered. It's quite an effort to go through state legislation to get these state tax credit programs kind of up and running, funded. And so it's great to see that 29 have actually accomplished that, and I'm sure more will come in the future. The primary role of establishing a state credit is to basically fill the funding gaps in building affordable housing. And often they're paired with our 4% LIHTC credits at the federal level. So state allocation rules are generally aligned with federal guidelines and included in a state's QAP. States can make adjustments to these rules to meet local needs, like targeting homelessness, workforce housing, or other priorities. And state LIHTC programs typically have a shorter credit period than the federal LIHTC program. So I was talking to Ryan about this just before we started. I found 6 to 10 years. He said he's seeing a lot of 10 years in the data that he's going to present in his presentation. And states often place a cap on the amount of tax credits that can be allocated to an individual project. So that limits the total funding available for each development. Most state programs require developers to compete for these credits with allocation decisions based on factors like feasibility, community impact, and the financial need for those tax credits. So talking about, what is the impact, the overall positive impact, and then the challenges that are faced with offering a state LIHTC credit. So increased on the positive side, increased project feasibility. State LIHTC programs, again, it's to fill that financing gap. That's really the main benefit that this provides, especially with those 4% federal tax credits, which allows for larger and more complex projects to move forward. Local economic development is another benefit that comes out of offering these credits. Obviously, there's job creation and construction and property management as more affordable housing projects are available. And ultimately, that should lead to more infrastructure, schools, and services for communities where these projects are achieved. Geographic targeting, which kind of meets needs with diversity as well as population targeting, the next one on the list. Geographic is focusing more on specific areas like very low income neighborhoods, qualified census tracts, or difficult to develop areas in a community. Population targeting could be focused on like senior citizens, people with disabilities, low-income veterans or workforce housing, and address specific regional housing shortages, whether that's urban centers or rural areas. Challenges, challenges are kind of to be expected here. There's not a lot of downside to offering a state credit that I personally can see. I'd love to hear in the chat if there's others with a different opinion, but the ones that we came up with include like funding limitations. So obviously the amount of funds allocated to each state are limited. This means that competition for these credits can be pretty fierce, and developers can face difficulty in securing the credits, which could lead to delays or cancellations in those projects. And then, of course, there's always the compliance factor. So developers who receive those state LIHTC credits have to comply with state and federal affordability requirements for a specific amount of time. And there's monitoring and enforcement that's required at the agency level to make sure that that compliance is actually being conducted and is according to the rules that regulate these programs. So those are the things to keep in mind. At this point, I'm going to hand things over to Ryan to take over for us, and he will walk us through the rest of kind of the ProLink HFA side of how we manage these state LIHTC credits.
All right, thank you, Bree, for your overview. That was really helpful. I am sharing my screen to take over Bree's. Okay. All right, so before we dive into today's topic, just wanted to talk about the webinar series roadmap that we have for this year. We've been receiving a lot of questions from you guys, our customer base, questions like these. I'm curious about TCA allocation cycle utility. How does ProLink support me in managing HTF and home programs? How do I track credit amount for TCA deal and link it to the 9% allocation cycle? These are all great questions, and that's why we made focus of this year's webinar to be your burning questions. So starting in February webinar, we focus on TCA modules, really discuss the TCA allocation cycle utility overview in February. And today we are diving into state tax credit programs and how we support your state tax credit programs using our platform. And we have April and May webinars lined up to further discuss TCA module. And then we'll move on to that module in June and end the webinar series in October with a little bit of a portfolio properties. So that's the roadmap for this year's webinar. So let's dive into state tax credit programs. My presentation will be in two parts today. Part one will be at the high level, looking at the TCA allocation cycle utility, where you really define your funding allocation rounds, such as 9% and 4%. So that'll be kind of high level look at our system. And then second part of my presentation, we're going in the weeds to look at the TCA deal level information. So let's start with TCA allocation cycle utility. This is a recap of what we presented in February. So it was presented by Tom Deng, who is our senior solutions consultant in ProLink. And he presented these topics really to give you an overview of TCA allocation cycle utility. Like one thing I would like to highlight will be this bullet right here. How do I populate allocation credits in the deal screen at the utility level? So, if any of these topics are relevant to you, and if you didn't attend the webinar, there's the, YouTube channel. I think Sam is putting this link in the chat right now. So you can click on the link and watch the recording anytime you like.
Yes, I just shared it.
Thank you, Sam. All right, so going back to TCA allocation cycle utility, typically we have a cycle types called 9% competitive and 4% tax exempt, right? ProLink's TCA allocation cycle utility was designed to support your QAP. So among many things, QAPs dictate your tax credit rounds, and by default, every state has 9% and 4% rounds built into your annual cycle. So our utility definitely support those 9% and 4% rounds. So if you look at this, we put together a little animation here. First, you create a record for 9% competitive cycle type. By using 9% competitive cycle type to create this round in our system, that enables a number of functionalities that are tailored to managing 9% credits federal level, and that was presented in February webinar. So 2024, and cycle name, you can name it whatever you like, but 2024 9% competitive round, something like that will make sense. And then you'll assign individual TCA deals. So you'll see from 0 to increasing to 9, meaning 9 TCA deals have been assigned to this cycle. The next one, you create 4% tax exempt cycle using 4% tax exempt cycle type. Again, by using this cycle type, it enables for you to use functionalities that are built to support your 4% non-competitive deals. Let's see how many number of deals, 14 deals, right? So 14 TCA deals have been assigned to this round. So now let's talk about state program. State tax credit programs can be set up in a few different ways, and that's really depending on how your state programs have been designed within your state, right? And most likely your QAP will describe what that state program, tax credit program might look like in your state. The one way to set up is, as Bree mentioned, pairing your state LIHTC with either federal 4% credit, which is most common thing I have seen, or you can pair it with 9% as well. In that case, you could create a record, a cycle separately, and you could call it 2024 4% tax exempt with state credit. And let's say out of this 14 TCA deals, let's say 4 of them have state credits in addition to get paired with the federal 4% credit. In that case, you'll be assigning those 4 TCA deals to the separate cycle called 2024 4% tax exempt with state credit, which will leave 10 TCA deals assigned to this cycle, which will be just tracking pure 4% federal credit deals. Or if you have a standalone state credit programs, so common examples might be your middle income or workforce housing state credits or like disaster credits, those things that are not paired with your federal tax credits, you will set up a separate cycle with using special program as a cycle type. And you can name it whatever you like, but it could be 2024 state tax credit round, or maybe state 2024 middle income housing state credit round, something like that. And you'll assign, for example, 8 TCA deals to that round to track those deals separately from the federal 9% or 4%. And so on and so forth. And let me highlight some of the special programs that we have here. So now that we do have some understanding of the allocation cycle utility, let's go into TCA deal level. The question we are asking here is if you have state tax credit programs in your state and have some deals applying for state credits, what data points would you track at the deal level? This is a page at the TCA deal level. We're looking at a deal called Bay Commons, and we're looking at the feasibility tab. This tab is to support our customer states in their effort to ensure financial feasibility of proposed developments. So the page captures things like operating income and expenses, some key metrics such as DCRs, and also what you're looking at is the eligible basis and development cost calculations. It really helps HFAs comply with the rules that are built into IRS Section 42. So as you can see in this set of columns, you have federal eligible basis calculation you can see. And then separately from that, we have a state LIHTC column for you to capture and calculate eligible basis and drive credit amounts separately from the federal credits, right? In parallel with the federal 9% deal, 9% credits for this example. So you can see total development cost of 5.3 million, eligible basis, same amount. You have applicable fraction, qualified basis with the tax credit percentage that to drive your state credit amount. The next one is we'll look at the development costs. It's a separate page. That page shows all the line item values that roll up to the screen that we're just looking at just right now. And this is where I will bring up our demo environment. And we are just looking at the feasibility tab. So let me click on development cost tab. Hopefully I am not signed out. Here you go. So if you look at development cost tab, we do the same thing. You have a separate column for state LIHTC so that you can build up that development cost separately from federal LIHTC calculations. You can see on the contractor cost, these are all the hard cost line items. And then if I scroll down, you see the owner cost, which is basically your soft costs. We don't have any values on the LIHTC column. And then down below, you see the total development costs plus applicable fraction and credit percentage and so forth. So this is again Prolink's way to support your state program if you're tracking your eligible basis and credit calculations separately from federal LIHTC calculations. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of data you want to track as far as your state tax credit programs. And that's going to be largely determined by how your state tax credit program has been designed. And every state has a slightly different way of calculating state tax credits. But we'll put it in two buckets that we have observed. The approach one is what we just saw, which is how Prolink supports you, which is to bottom-up approach, meaning calculating your state credit amount from scratch, from your development costs to eligible basis to qualified basis, apply the credit percentage and drive the credit amount for state credits, completely separate from federal credits. So we call that bottom-up approach, and the alternative approach will be top-down approach. This will be flat rate of your federal credits. So we have seen examples out there where you apply certain percentage to eligible bases that are used by 9% federal credit or 4% federal credit. Or other examples we found was applying certain percentage to federal credit amount itself. So we have seen 20%, 50%, or sometimes 100%, meaning it's equal to federal credits as far as the annual amount for state credits. And we believe the second approach is more commonly utilized across all the states. And if you think about what are the data points you need to, if you are using the second approach, the data points will be pretty narrow. You won't have to track all the development costs, eligible bases, and all that because those are all tracked on the federal credit, so you don't have to duplicate that tracking. So from system point of view, good place to look at will be using user-defined fields in ProLinkHFA, which is custom fields that you can build yourself. So let's look at an example we built in our demo environment. We were just looking at feasibility tab, but now I'm drawing your attention to state program tab. This is a user-defined tab where you can design this field the way you like. But good example, just giving you an example of type of data fields that you can create and that you can track it for all your deals that are applying for state credits. Important one will be really state credit price, which is a critical data point to prove that there's investor appetite out there for your state credits in the market. So there are many factors that are affecting your credit pricing, but largely driven by your credit duration. So the shorter the duration, higher the price, right? That's generally how it goes. So if you have 5 to 6 year credit duration, more likely to have a higher credit price, such as 60, 70 cents per dollar. If you have a 10-year duration, which is same as federal credit, then you might end up with a little lower credit price, such as 50-cent range. So let's look at some data views we put together for you. So I'm going to bring our demo environment. I'm looking at TCA property data view, and we have set up two different views here. We'll start with state credit tracking view. Let me just, yeah. So what you're looking at is 3 TCA deals that are rolling up to this cycle we set up, which is a 2025 new opportunity state credit cycle. So these 3 deals have been assigned to this cycle. We've been looking at Bay Common. So one good set of columns you could have will be geographic related columns. So tracking the county, qualified census tract, difficult development area. Those will be good columns to add, as your state tax credit programs will probably have certain geographic concentration or focus. And then target type, we mentioned about diversity and certain population type that you'll be focusing for your part of your state tax credit programs. And then I added few columns that describe all the eligible basis calculation we saw. So this view is really supporting approach 1, where you're building eligible basis from scratch. So this is a set of state credit calculations in parallel with 9% federal credits. So this is one example, and then I'll give you another view that is really supporting approach 2 to give you some columns to capture those user-defined fields we set up. We've got like a few minutes left here. So same set of deals rolling up to new opportunity state credit, same set of columns here, but if you scroll to the right, you can see all the user-defined fields we just saw, including the state credit amount, equity, and then price. So this is how you can easily track the state credit price trend in your state. Okay, so just last couple of minutes, I'll just go over 2 frequently asked questions. The first question is, can I create my own cycle type? So this pick list cycle type used to be a system pick list, so you couldn't really touch it or customize. So these are the system values that you kind of had to live with. But now it is a non-system pick list. So that means I just added the new opportunity credit as one of the cycle types by going into admin section and just go to PL cycle type, and you can add new opportunity credit. So if you want to explore this option, you can talk to your admin user, and they will be able to add you those new cycle types for you. Once you add that cycle type, then you can use in your setting up a new cycle. Right? The next question will be, how do I track more data points at the allocation cycle level? So we saw user-defined fields at the TCA deal level earlier. This is a user-defined fields at the cycle level. So if you could, if you like to create some definitions of that, cycle you have, you can create this kind of user-defined fields. And then when you go to allocation cycles utility, the homepage, just a reminder that the homepage itself is data view. So you can customize the homepage yourself, just like any data view. So in this case, I added those 2 user-defined fields. So you can see it right on the homepage. Plus, I actually group by cycle year. So it's just easier to look at, but just giving you a little idea of how to customize your homepage for the allocation cycle. My last slide before passing on to Bree will be just giving you a heads up of our next webinar in April. April 2nd, Wednesday, same time like today, we'll be talking about managing additional credits and return credits using allocation cycle, and we'll walk you through some of the functionality we built. There's a multi-year tracking tab as well as return credit tab built into the allocation cycle utility. So I'll pass back on to Bree.
Thanks, Ryan. I just get to say thank you. So thank you guys very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. We do have our next webinar coming up that Ryan just shared. So the link, I believe, to register has already been put in the chat for you. You can go ahead and do that if you plan to join us next month. And please do provide feedback to us on this event. We really appreciate your feedback on the material that we're providing, on ideas for future topics. Anything like that is very helpful for us. So we appreciate your continued attendance here, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a good afternoon.